Trump's military escalated pressure on Iran by striking an Iran-bound tanker amid growing fears of a wider regional conflict. Washington's strike on a tanker reignited questions over whether the fragile US-Iran ceasefire is already falling apart. A Hellfire missile strike in Gulf waters has fueled fresh concerns of another dangerous US-Iran escalation. The Pentagon released dramatic strike footage as competing narratives emerged over new maritime incidents in the region. Washington says its latest move is part of a broader campaign to tighten pressure on Tehran across Gulf waters. American officials described the action as enforcement of restrictions targeting maritime access to Iranian ports. The disclosure came after U.S. Central Command revealed details of an operation carried out in the Arabian Gulf. According to U.S. officials, the vessel was heading toward one of Iran's most strategically important oil terminals. Military authorities allege the tanker repeatedly failed to comply with instructions issued by coalition forces. U.S. officials say communication attempts continued for hours before commanders approved intervention. American forces ultimately used an air-launched weapon to stop the vessel from continuing its voyage. The strike reportedly rendered the tanker inoperable before it could reach its intended destination. CENTCOM maintains the operation was conducted under existing blockade enforcement protocols. Kharg Island remains central to Iran's energy sector and serves as a key export gateway. U.S. officials say several commercial vessels have already been targeted under the ongoing enforcement campaign. Washington claims dozens of additional ships have altered course rather than approach Iranian ports. American authorities insist the restrictions apply regardless of a vessel's nationality or ownership. U.S. officials stress that international shipping not linked to Iranian ports can still transit the region. The latest maritime incident comes amid renewed military friction between Iran and the United States across the Gulf. Conflicting claims from Washington and Tehran have once again turned Gulf shipping lanes into a flashpoint. The U.S. military publicly showcased the strike, highlighting its ability to enforce blockade measures at sea. American officials presented the footage as proof that violations of the maritime restrictions would face immediate consequences. The release came amid growing disputes over recent incidents involving commercial vessels across the region. Questions remain unanswered regarding the status of those aboard after the tanker was disabled. The confrontation underscores how a single maritime encounter could rapidly push both sides toward renewed escalation. On June 1, Iran's Revolutionary Guard said their naval forces targeted a U.S.-Israel-linked commercial vessel near Iraq's port, framing the strike as part of an ongoing maritime confrontation. The Guards claimed they fired a cruise missile at the container ship MS Ceasefire in what they called a revenge attack, explicitly tying the operation to earlier U.S. military actions at sea. According to their statement, the strike was carried out in response to a U.S. military attack on the Iran-bound vessel Lian Star in the Sea of Oman, which Tehran portrayed as unprovoked aggression. Iranian state outlet Press TV reported that MS Ceasefire suffered a major explosion after being hit, suggesting the ship sustained significant damage even though it remained afloat. The IRGC warned that any further U.S. aggression in the region would be met with a decisive response, signaling Tehran's intent to keep using maritime attacks as a tool of deterrence and retaliation. This latest warning came as U.S. Central Command announced on May 30 that it had disabled a Gambia-flagged cargo ship. U.S. forces fired a Hellfire missile after the vessel ignored more than 20 warnings issued overnight. CENTCOM said a U.S. aircraft fired the Hellfire into the engine room of the MV Lian Star. The vessel was allegedly moving through international waters toward an Iranian port in the Gulf of Oman. CENTCOM said the ship was left disabled and was no longer continuing toward Iran. U.S. Central Command said, and I quote, U.S. forces operating in the Gulf of Oman enforced blockade measures by disabling a Gambia-flagged maritime vessel attempting to sail toward an Iranian port, May 29. U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, forces observed MV Lian Star transiting international waters toward an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman and issued more than 20 warnings while informing the vessel it was in violation of the U.S. blockade. A U.S. aircraft disabled the vessel by firing a Hellfire missile into the ship's engine room after Lian Star's crew failed to comply. The ship is no longer transiting to Iran. U.S. forces have disabled 5 commercial vessels and redirected 116 to fully enforce the blockade as a ceasefire with Iran remains in effect. Unquote. The vessel remained adrift in the Gulf of Oman and had not been boarded by U.S. forces, AP reported. The U.S. naval move comes amid uncertainty over efforts to extend the fragile ceasefire. Talks are underway on a possible 60-day extension to address Iran's nuclear issue. No final understanding has yet been reached, with Hormuz still at the center of the standoff. Iran has said its strategic partners, China and Russia, will continue to receive special treatment in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian MP Ibrahim Azizi stated that both countries would enjoy favorable conditions for maritime transit, according to reports. The remarks come after Iran announced plans to impose tolls on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, a move strongly opposed by the United States. The announcement also came as Washington continued its economic pressure campaign aimed at restricting Iran's oil exports and wider energy trade. On May 28, visuals emerged showing Iran exporting oil and LPG to China and Pakistan through expanding rail connections. Footage shared by RT showed long lines of tanker wagons moving through the night along the transport corridor. Iranian media claimed rail traffic to China has tripled nearly 50 days into the ongoing U.S. blockade campaign. The rail route offers Tehran an alternative export channel beyond maritime routes that remain exposed to regional tensions. Meanwhile, Washington announced a fresh round of sanctions targeting Iran's oil shipping and transport network. U.S. officials said the measures are designed to cut revenue flows linked to the IRGC and allied groups. Tommy Pigott said, and I quote, "The U.S. is targeting the Iranian regime's dark fleet and illicit oil networks under economic fury. Today's sanctions cut off billions in revenue that funds the IRGC, proxy forces, and attacks on our partners. Any entity trading Iranian oil faces serious risk of U.S. sanctions." Unquote.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.